Welcome back to Garden Studio. I'm Tessa Pinner, a designer and gardener in upstate South Carolina, Zone 8A. Today's video is an autumnal porch refresh, but I wanted to preface with two things. First, this is a longer form video. The front entrance actually needed a good bit of cleanup work. We do that first, and then go to the process of potting everything and staging it. And I walk you through every step, why I've chosen what I've chosen and what my thoughts are on how to do it as economically and strategically as possible, because that is very important to me. And I think we all have limited resources. So that brings me to my second point. As I was, and I'm actually filming this intro after the video, so if I look a little dirty, I am dirty. I have been working all day. My second thought as I was working was just on the beauty of imperfection. And what I mean by that is this kind of cottage and English gardening style that I personally love and strive for here in my garden lends itself very well to things not being perfect. I have found visually and horticulturally, when you embrace diversity and a lot of different elements of interest, your overall scheme is actually a lot more forgiving. So you might have the leaves blow in from a neighbor's tree, or some, in my case, I was cleaning zoysia out of my beds because it is a very aggressive creeper, or weeds, or something just not looking its very best. And you know what? If you have a diversity of things going on, a lot for your eye to look at, yes, you want to give it focal points, but those little things that aren't perfect just don't matter all that much. So to me, that's a very conscious choice to say, part of the reason I garden this way is so that when it's not perfect, it actually looks just as good. It looks fine. It gives a sense of lived-in-ness and comfort to a space. Let's go and refresh this porch. This is my front porch and the area that I will be working on today. As you can see, it's been a while since this area has gotten any love. Generally, I'm working in the back, I'm in the kitchen garden, I'm in the perennial cottage garden, and I'm not even thinking so much about what the front of my house looks like. Oh my goodness, time for that to change. So today's boxwood replacements are going to be this one and this one with the Better Boxwood Babylon Beauty. And I do not remember what cultivar this is. Probably better that I don't, because it's not done great. It's a scraggly, kind of more open form, and I'm looking forward to getting something that I can shape and tailor better, like the Babylon Beauty. Other than that, I will be doing some cleanup on ground level, training and pruning the climbing roses, and adding a bit of annual color and festivity to these steps. So I'm all done with the cleanup portion of this little project, and I'm on to the fun part, which is planting and then staging the steps. And I wanted to show you the elements that I have here. My goal was really to keep it very simple and spend as little as possible to have something that was still festive feeling. I think we've all seen the fabulous porches with many, many stairs and hundreds of pumpkins. And that is just frankly, well, I don't have hundreds of stairs and I don't want to spend hundreds of dollars on pumpkins. So I gave myself about $100 budget to get some pumpkins, just enough pumpkins, some annuals, a couple of mums, because what is fall without a couple of mums? And then of course, these Better Boxwoods. So I wanted to take a minute and talk about these. If you've been in the gardening world for any amount of time, you know that boxwood blight is a serious issue that we as Southerners and really all over the world have to contend with. The blight is an infection that once a plant has it, it cannot be cured. And really the best defense is prevention, or in the case of something like Better Boxwoods, breeding a more resistant plant, coming up with 4 different cultivars that suit different garden needs, and breeding them specifically to have resistance to blight. So that doesn't mean they're totally immune, but it does mean that they are going to be less susceptible than many of the other older varieties. And as someone who loves classical gardens, English style, there is nothing that can really replace boxwoods. So I was very excited to get my hands on a couple of these. This is the cultivar Babylon Beauty, which is very compact. And my goal is to prune them into really nice balls over time. So these are very young plants. I probably won't touch them much now. I might give them a little bit of a shape. I think really the best way to get to know a plant is to grow it yourself. So I have a front and center spot for these that I will really enjoy getting to see what they do. And I will probably report back over time as to how my experience with these goes. But I'm really thankful to Better Boxwoods for sending me these and letting me learn firsthand. The pumpkins and the mums, I would say, are specifically autumnal or fall season. So these will go for probably another few weeks. If that, really I'm getting them at the height of their bloom. They are exploding now and they will go over fairly quickly. They're just so pretty. I wanted a moment with these mums, and then when they're gone, I will replace them with something else. Then these annuals, this is the Eldorado Golden Swiss Chard. I have this in a window box. I don't know if you can see it behind me, but I did a video planting a combination that included this ornamental chard and this wave trailing pansy. This is the Cool Wave Frost. It is time to get planting, and I will start off with these annuals. I have this first terracotta pot filled to a few inches below the rim. I can fill it up more at the end. Here's my chard. I'll break up the roots just a very little bit. I once heard a gardener I respect, and I forget who it was now, say that because you want a quick season on your annuals, you don't necessarily have to break up the root ball as much as you would something that's going to be a multi-season plant that's going in the ground. It's okay for the roots to stay compact because really we're squishing a lot in a small space when we do a planter. We don't necessarily want them to spread out and go everywhere. So I do just a little tickling of the root ball just to encourage a little bit of branching, but I'm not really breaking it apart. Because I'm looking at this from one dimension, this is not an in the round planter. It's going against the steps. You'll be primarily approaching it from one side. I will do this taller plant at the back and do these trailers around the front. And it won't take long at all for this to fill completely in. It's already pretty full. It'll look great from day one, which is what I always say is what we want with a planter. We are not patient when it comes to planters. I think if you do a planter, you do it, you pack it in. There we go. That looks great. I'll top it off here. I'll use my fingers to compact the soil here just a little bit. And last touch is a good dose of Osmocote. Since especially the pansies are very heavy feeders, they won't keep blooming if they're hungry. So I want them blooming. So every month or so, I will come through and add, here we go, there's the front, a couple of shakes of this. And I will do the other planter exactly the same way. If you have a terracotta pot rake, don't throw the pot away. Make it into smaller pieces. It's actually quite fun to drop a pot on purpose and let it crack everywhere. And these are called pot shards, and they go in the bottom of containers for drainage. Another option for the same thing that's really light is styrofoam packing peanuts. I would not go buy these just from an environmental perspective, but if you have some that come with a package, then those can go in the bottom of your pot as well. And the benefit to that is they add drainage without weight. But I'm adding a few more here. And this terracotta pot is a very inexpensive, just Home Depot special. And the longer you have these, the better they look because they get a little bit of a patina of age. Unfortunately, they're not frost-proof terracotta. So I found you get about 5 years out of them and then they might crack. But in the meantime, it's a nice classic look and it's not expensive. So this is going in here, but I actually am going to pot it up. And the reason for that is this tiny pot to the ratio of foliage is, it's tough to keep this watered. You have to water these all the time. And there have been many seasons that my mums have died, not because they were done flowering or that it got too cold or anything like that, but just that I didn't keep them watered enough. And they're going in the sun, they'll dry out quickly. So more soil volume in this container will help them look their best as long as they can. And actually, I think what I am gonna do with this, because there's so much bulk coming out the sides and it'll be hard to fill up the remainder of this pot with soil. Here is a good trick that I learned at one of the gardens I worked at. I think it was in Pennsylvania, where you set the pot in the container and you fill around the pot and then it leaves a perfect hole. You can see we have a perfect cavity when we remove the pot, and the plant will just go right into that spot. Boop, like a glove. And believe me, that is so much easier than trying to come back here. It's like lifting up the skirt and trying not to break or getting any of these blooms, these white blooms, muddy. That is perfect. So I will do that exact same thing with this pot here and then move on to staging everything. I forgot, before we move on to the staging, I have to get these Babylon Beauties planted, and I wanted to show you the root ball. This is a really nice root ball on these. But what I want to do here, as opposed to the short-term annual planting, this I hope will be in this pot a while. So I am really gonna pull apart, tease apart some of these roots that are all matted together. I want to encourage them, this is the only thing in this pot, to go out and to fill the pot. I'm happy with that. Doesn't need to be too extreme. And I will choose an orientation. I actually think that might be perfect. We don't need this tag anymore, although it is helpful to read the tag. Max size for this variety, the Babylon Beauty, is 3 feet high and 4 to 5 feet wide. That is over probably the space of about 10 years. And whenever you put something in the pot, you do restrict growth. So that is not a size that I will achieve in this pot, nor would I want to. I will keep it pruned. So anytime you see a size recommendation on a label, you have to consider the environment that it's going in and whether or not you're going to be regularly pruning it. And both of those will be a factor for this to keeping it compact. might notice that this top of the root ball is fairly high in the pot. That's actually on purpose because boxwoods like to sit high. They don't like to be in a dip. That will cause them to have more disease issues. So even in a pot, I'm planting this one high. I'll slope the potting soil up to it, but I want him to sit up a little bit. I'm happy with this. I will water this in and add a little more soil to the top if the volume depresses significantly when I water it. And then I'll move on to the other one. We are ready to have fun. And a little surprise that I'm holding. I went foraging this morning for some pampas grass, which if you are anywhere in the Southeast, you can probably find at any number of public and easily harvestable places. Just put it that way. Mine was on an easement, and I don't think anybody will miss a few stalks. Besides, at this time of year, a lot of times companies will have the landscaper go and just chop everything back to the ground. So these are dramatic and they were free. So I've bound the stalks with a little bit of twine, and I'm going to use them as a dramatic element to just bring a light color up. I will need to support them to this railing. So before they flop over, that is what I am going to do first, is just tie them in. All right, I will adjust those at the end as needed. In the meantime, I'll position these other things. So the mums being in this plain terracotta pot, I have decided to put up here towards the back to where you see the white peeking out, but the pot is definitely not as special as this antique one. So it is going towards the back of the arrangement. These going to try in the corners. Do the same on this side. When it comes to arranging pots, sometimes you just have to step back and try a few positions. In this case, my front is really set for me because I did these charred at the back and this little crest is at the front of the pot. All right, let's see. I think these pumpkins are next. And I definitely don't want the pumpkins on the ground because I know they would rot faster if they were touching. You can see what happens when I water these pots. I don't have dishes under all of them. It dries, but it definitely gets wet, and that would rot the pumpkins much more quickly. Porch refresh is officially done. I'm very happy with the way this arrangement leads your eye, narrows the view, makes this entrance feel like this really cozy experience that's also very welcoming. This is actually quite a nice place to sit. I'm going to have a very well-deserved rest. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful week in your own gardens.